My name is Dergachev. I work at Evolvingweb. We're a small Drupal consulting shop here. Probably most of you know of us. We've done a lot of work for Government of Canada, McGill University, and actually bigger clients in the States like Velocity and A&E Television. We generally like to have a presence at DrupalCamp and DrupalCamp. Maybe you've seen this a lot. And I personally am very excited about automation and Vagrant and Chef because I inherited from our previous developers quite a large Chef infrastructure that I didn't really have a clue how it worked. And by that point, it had already accumulated some funds. And when they left, and then the new developers were like, I don't need this stuff, I had to roll up my sleeves and figure it out. And so what I'm presenting today is kind of getting started in that world pretty easily. So let's see. There's going to be two talks. There's going to be this one about Vagrant, which is kind of the intro stuff. I have some slides and some demos, and there's going to be a second talk by my colleague Amir, who's going to focus specifically on Chef, which is a bit of a provisioner. I'll discuss what that is in a minute. And also on writing a Drupal deployment cookbook with Chef, which I think is going to be near and dear to our hearts. So this is kind of going to be the more intro talk, and that's going to be the more detailed talk. I'd just like to ask, who here has used Vagrant before? Fantastic. Okay, 1.5. Who has used Chef before? None? Okay. Who has seen Ruby code in their life before? 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. And who has written a bash deployment script for Drupal before? 2. Who has written a script? Well, anything. Like anything that looks like. Who has written a bash script? All right, good. So this is the right guy. Okay. There's a nice little portion of caffeine. I think I should have it. Yes, activate. Do you guys see a cup of coffee here?
Yes, you have. And a clipboard.
It's there. It's just like hidden. Okay. All right. So, you guys all know what Vagrant is and why you're here to enjoy this talk? Okay. So yeah. So you can think of it. It's more than that. But this is kind of a simplified way of viewing it. You can think of it as a wrapper on vbox manage. So vbox manage is a command line tool that comes installed if you install VirtualBox. You guys, who here has used VirtualBox or VMware or something similar? Excellent. So, of course, the GUI for VirtualBox is not that complicated. You make a new VM. It's going to start asking you all kinds of questions. How much RAM you want to give it. What kind of hard drive you want. I guess it's going to ask you other stuff. It'll ask you some nonsense. Okay, I just made a new VM. There should be settings in there somewhere for networking settings as well. So there's NAT, which is network address translation. Like your host computer is like a router. There's bridge, which is it makes your VM's virtual network card appear to your parent network as if it's one of the things. So it's literally like your computer's acting like a hub. Internal network means, and host only, I always confuse the two, but it basically means nobody else can see it except the host. Yeah, so that's the networking settings. It has another feature called shared folders. Who knows what that is? It's like a computer gets magically synchronized 2 ways to a folder in the VM. A little gotcha I discovered, by the way, is that it will obliterate whatever, like when you specify the path, it will obliterate whatever is already, like RMRF was on the VM, so just so you know. So it has this feature, and it has port forwarding, which is kind of nice because when you spin up a VM, if you enable the port forwarding feature of VirtualBox, it will make sure that localhost 8080, for example, is automatically port forwarded as if it would an SSH tunnel, not with SSH, but rather with magic of VirtualBox to the VM. So these are pretty handy features of VirtualBox that you might use in your development workflow. The reality is most people weren't using it. I mean, people would set up a VM and they'd leave it lying around. It has a wrapper. So go back to the next handy slide. It has a wrapper. It has a tool called vbox manage where you can do everything from command line. Check out how stupid it is. So it's got all these subcommands and additional subcommands. So it's kind of like, but it's really ugly. Like nobody likes memorizing what they are. You have to pretty much memorize the MID, which is, I don't know if you see this number here. I'm gonna type that. So I'm gonna type that every time. So it's really not that fun to use. So where does Vagrant come in? It's a wrapper. You can think of it as a wrapper on VBox Manage to give a great development workflow experience. It basically, the guy's idea was this. Mitchell Hashimoto, who started with this. You're not using VMs for your development practices right now. You should be. I mean, because it'll make your code a lot more robust. You can develop in a very similar environment as the rest of your team members and similar to what you're deploying to. It'll allow you to easily test deployment because you can just destroy the VM and start up again. It'll allow you to onboard a team member much faster because you'll have a VM and maybe even a set of scripts to get it up and running, and then boom, on the very first day they already have the whole kit and caboodle set up. And it just makes everything easier. So people weren't doing that, so he wrote a workflow tool that makes it easy and fun. So that's what Vagrant is. So Vagrant's a way of life. And I guess the concept of Vagrant is like, your home is anywhere. So you kind of like aren't tied down to your laptop, you doesn't learn. Yeah, so to install Vagrant, you gotta download VirtualBox and download Vagrant. I recommend you don't have to do it right now, but you just go to vagrant.com. Vagrant is a Ruby gem. It used to be distributed as a gem, like gem install Vagrant. Eventually, the creator of it said, well, I want it to work on Windows. I want it to work whether or not you have Ruby 1.8 installed or Ruby 2.0 installed. I want it to be very easy to get started no matter what your thing is. So we went ahead and we actually scrapped the gem idea. It's still around, but if you ever see people talking about it, it's pretty much either for internal development purposes only or on a date. Instead, you should go to the downloads page and download the appropriate package for your operating system, and that's kind of a all-in-one. It's got Ruby and all the dependent gems, the Vagrant gem, all bundled into one. So you just download this and it'll work. Then you also need to download VirtualBox. I think at the very moment, if you're going to do this tonight, which of course you are, why don't you get so excited? If you're going to do this tonight, you shouldn't download I think it's VirtualBox 1. Do you remember what just came out, like yesterday? There's a new version that just came out.
So you should or shouldn't?
No.
4.3?
Yeah. So 4.3 just came out this week, and first of all, it adds a Mavericks button, as far as I heard. And second of all, it's not quite compatible with Vagrant. He's already written the code to make it compatible, and it'll be the next release, which may have gone out this morning, or so just be careful. So I've got the latest 2.18, and that'll work, or you can wait a couple of days. Maybe Vagrant will test it. Sweet. So you download VirtualBox. The other thing I should mention is Vagrant initially was written as a wrapper on VirtualBox, but as you can imagine, VirtualBox isn't the only kid in the block just because it's the most commonly used open source-esque. It's owned by Oracle, so who knows if it's big open source and free tool, but it has a lot of limitations. Oracle kind of slowed down on development quite a bit. So his business model was to write a more proprietary, not so open source plugin for Vagrant to support VMware, because a lot of enterprise teams are not using VirtualBox and using VMware. So basically, Vagrant, the Ruby thing, is architected to be as agnostic as possible for the actual backend virtualization solution. And so he did a big refactoring that's with Vagrant 1.1, which supported VMware as a backend and other backends. And actually, what's really exciting is the moment he did that, he also wrote, without much fanfare, without telling anybody, Vagrant. These are called Vagrant providers, so the VM thing. Adapters. So he wrote a Vagrant EC2 adapter. So with the same workflow that was working with a virtual machine on the VirtualBox, you just do the same thing, and then boom, you got an EC2 thing that all you have to do is configure your EC2 key or something, and then it spins up. And then other people wrote a Vagrant DigitalOcean provider, which is kind of a trendy EC2 Heroku style thing. Somebody wrote a Vagrant LXC provider. If you know LXC, it's kind of like OpenVZ. It's a Linux container-based thing, much faster, much more lighter weight than VirtualBox. Of course, LXC uses Linux containers, so I can't use LXC. It's not good virtual. Although you can actually install Vagrant inside of a VirtualBox. I did this. You can install Vagrant inside of a VirtualBox VM, and then run Vagrant LXC on it, and it will speed up your workflow because spinning up a container as opposed to a full virtualized machine is a lot faster. Great. So that's what you do. Here are the docs. So check out the websites are really snazzy, as appropriate for workflow tools that are supposed to like get you excited about how sexy they are. And this is a Ruby guy. Look at this website. I mean, Drupal.org is the website. Yeah. So look, it's got scrolling stuff, not too many animations. See how easy it is. Boom. That's the first 3 commands you're gonna need to run. I'll cover that in my slides. The documentation section is, it actually got a little bit more hairy after he added all the providers. But even still, this is some of the better, like, most readable. It's like a 30-page book that you should read more or less cover to cover because all these pages are short, readable, and after these slides, you should be very comfortable with what they're talking about. So I recommend reading it cover to cover. It'll only take you like half hour, and it's great stuff. All right. I'm get used to it. Yeah, I'm gonna do this in this tab. Press command 1 to get that. Okay, so then you need to know about the concept of a base box before we do much of anything else. So like I said, Vagrant is a wrapper on vbox manage, and Vagrant lets you spin up a development environment really easily and then provision it and configure it to your liking, all semi-automatically. And what it starts with is it starts with a base VM, which is called a base box. So a box in its parlance is just a virtual machine image of compatible with whatever provider. So I guess what's the EC2 name for images? AMI? Yeah. So a base box could be, I guess, I think kind of like an AMI. So like it grabs the notion of an AMI, but this image needs to have a Vagrant user installed. So like, you know, when Vagrant tells VirtualBox to start it, Vagrant then needs to connect to it and do some stuff, right? So it's got to have a Vagrant user with a Vagrant password. It's got to have the standard Vagrant SSH key set up for that, so you can do passwordless authentication. If it's VirtualBox, it's going to want VirtualBox guest edition. And basically, once Vagrant does connect to it, what is it going to do? It's going to run whatever deployment script you've asked it to set up. And typically, deployment is often done with either Chef or Puppet, although like Fabric and Ansible are other provisioner trendy things that are coming out. Salt. So some of those are Python-based. Many of them are Ruby-based. Like Chef and Puppet are both Ruby-based, so you need to have Ruby. Fortunately, you don't have to set up a base box. That's hence decides how easy it is. If you go to check out this website, the vagrantboxes.es, I'll put it for you. And here is, my slides will be up in case you're worried. Here's a listing of people's contributed boxes. Look, there's even an eager one, isn't that awesome? Chris Ergowajic, Chris from Kubid is a Vagrant user, so not surprising to see some Drupal specific stuff here. I personally only use the official Vagrant boxes. What is vagrant.com? Because at the end of the day, you're running a VM on your computer, you're going to be developing to it, who knows, maybe you copy by hook or crook your private key. It's probably okay, just like installing an apt-get package from a PPA, as opposed to the canonical Ubuntu repositories, it's probably okay. But just in case, I mean, I don't know, I've been okay with actually just using these base boxes. If it's hosted on Vagrant.com, it's produced by the guy who runs the Vagrant, and so it's at least more likely to be Trojan-free. Trojan-free? Alright, yeah, so that's you can just get a box, and I think the thing I wanted to show is they have a Lucid 32. This is Ubuntu, right? Lucid 32, Lucid 64, Precise 32, 64. Now that he's supporting VMware, he's got a Precise 64 VMware, and he doesn't have all that much else. But if you are adventurous, you will see that there's plenty of CentOS and FreeBSD and what other kinds of craziness boxes out there. So there's really nothing stopping you from experimenting. Also, you can actually make your own base box. So there's a link here on the Vagrant pages to the base boxes thing with some tutorials. And since then, there's been 2 tools that help you sort of automate box creation, where you have like a config file that you specify the user and the platform. And I don't remember how they work. I never actually played them. But so first of all, VB is the older one, and Packer is the newer one. And Packer was created by the same guy who created Vagrant, probably because he at some point extracted his script for creating the boxes that he runs to make his own, and gave it a snazzy name and a similarly snazzy website. It's just, see, pretty good for a little command line script. Alright. So that's making a base box. Now we're going to get to the fun part, the workflow itself. So I'm assuming you've already installed Vagrant. The first thing you're going to want to do, you know what the hash Ruby is, it's my markdown syntax there. Assuming you already installed Vagrant, you're going to have a command line utility in your computer called Vagrant. If you're on Windows, maybe it'll be vagrant.exe. Does anybody know how that works? Anybody here on Windows? I see you guys with a Dell computer over there. No Windows? Okay, cool. So you do Vagrant box add precise64, and what that tells Vagrant is, I would like you to add a box, which from now on, please label it as precise64, and I'll refer to it as such, and download the typically 250, 300 megabyte image from this URL. And so this command is going to take a little while to run because it has now a 300 megabyte file. It stores it in your home.vagrant D directory. So from that moment on, it's always available for you to invoke, tell Vagrant, spin this up. The next thing you want to do is maybe consider running Vagrant init. If you run Vagrant init in a folder, the temp make bigger. You guys can't see it. Vagrant demo. Alright, so nothing here. This is going to be a big project root folder where we're going to want to in Drush, there's the Drupal site, that's the Drupal root, so Drush just knows where you are. So in this folder, Vagrant's going to know where we are. And it's going to look for a Vagrant file. And right now, there's no Vagrant file for it to be config settings from, so we type Vagrant init. And a Vagrant file is just placed in this directory. And the Vagrant file is really full of comments. It seems quite long, but it's actually not. And this Vagrant file will contain, don't mind the Ruby syntax. This is Ruby, but you should just treat this as an ini file for your purposes, which is just like edit the things here, copy and paste snippets, and then you'll be good to go. So we have the base box. So in our case, we want to change that to precise64, since I just downloaded precise64. If you distribute your Vagrant file and they don't have the box that you're referencing, Vagrant's actually smart, so you can say, just in case you don't have that box by that label, here's the box URL, so Vagrant will go and download it. This looks like you're configuring network settings here. I know it's commented. Sorry, this is configuring port forwarding. So I already mentioned that VirtualBox supports port forwarding, so do many of the other virtualization providers. In the case of EC2, we'll probably use SSH to set that up. So here you're just going to ask Vagrant, when you spin up the box, please make sure that port forwarding is, and you can have as many of these as you want. So think VM network port one. This one is, here's how I want you to set up the networking. So you saw this just corresponds to all the settings that we saw in the VirtualBox GUI. That's a little feature. If you want, by default, when you spin up the box, VirtualBox will do shared folders. So by default, what I'll do is I'll take the project folder, this one right here, and all the files in it. So it might be Drupal code, it might be like your Ruby script that you're experimenting with, and I'll mount that in the VM under /Vagrant. So it'll do that by default. But if you want additional folders, either within this folder, within a subfolder somewhere else, or you want something else on your computer, you just add this sync folder thing. And then this is how you set memory usage. Okay, so then you get the Vagrant file. We'll come back to it in a bit. And you get it for free by writing Vagrant in it. And the next thing you want to do is just run Vagrant up. So actually, I'm going to change only one thing in here. Where's this base box? I'll change this to precise64. I do CLS, nothing but a Vagrant file, and I did effectively nothing but install Vagrant and to start the VM. What it's doing right now, it's good that I have a second to talk, is it's copying over that base box that you had from your home directory. It's there for safekeeping. It's copying it to another place where it's the running hard drive VM image. So keep in mind that the base box is kind of like a template that lives in your home directory, and every time you run Vagrant up, which tells Vagrant to ask VirtualBox nicely to spin up a VM, what just happened here, remember the folder was something called the Vagrant demo? So if I go back to my VirtualBox console, I now have a new machine here. It says Vagrant-demo and then some random number identifier. So it's copied it to somewhere else, and it has an ID. So Vagrant just created an ID for it. It's configured all the settings in VirtualBox as per your Vagrant file. And now Vagrant's in charge of sort of keeping, you don't have to ever look at the GUI, I'm just showing it to you, like it's in charge of keeping track of it. The way it keeps track of it, I mean, it seems to know that it's running, so because I can run this command Vagrant status, and you see, you can define multiple VMs in your project, but for now we're just stuck with the default one. So the default is actually running. Before I would have said the default is not started. How does it know which one? How does it map it? If I do ls-al, you'll actually see that there's now, since I ran Vagrant up, a .vagrant directory. And inside of .vagrant, there's this structure. And let's try ID. So you see, inside of .vagrant, there's machines, default, VirtualBox, ID, and then there's that long number that Vagrant just sort of says, vbox manage, here's the unique identifier that you told me when we started it, and that's it. Keep in mind, if you ever get in trouble, like for some reason you tweak your Vagrant file and you change the name from default to something else, but you didn't shut down the previous machine, Vagrant will literally lose track because it hardcodes the Vagrant VM name here. So to lose track of it, so you'll actually have to go in, look at the file, and figure things out. Or we'll just pop over to the GUI and kill it manually. So you saw Vagrant up. Once you tweak some setting in the Vagrant file, you will want to run Vagrant reload. So the machine's actually up. This is very exciting. I'll skip a few steps to Vagrant SSH. Okay, see this? So if I do Vagrant SSH, I'm inside the VM. It's already, so I have nothing set up besides installing Vagrant in VirtualBox and running Vagrant box at precise64 on that URL. So now I can do all kinds of things. Do I have Vim in here? I don't. So I do sudo apt get install Vim. This is on a Mac laptop. I can install Unix packages. I can go to town. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm excited about the fact that this was that easy to get started, and there's a whole workflow around developing for it. So like maybe with VirtualBox it would have been fairly easy to get started, but then you have this VM, and what do you do with it? We'll see in a second. Vagrant hooks. By the way, anybody knows what's complaining about?
Basically, it was not able to. You have to do apt-get updates, update indexes first.
Yeah. So the base boxes that the initial Hashimoto puts out are, a little
Outdated.
Yeah, it doesn't like roll a new build of them every day. So unfortunately, like you basically apt-get has a sort of a cache that either is up to date or not with the package repositories, and it's out of date. So you just have to run clear and regenerate package listings, and then you can do this. That's sort of working. Okay, so that's Vagrant SSH, and let's see. Do I have any services running on this thing? Does anybody know? I wanna like, does anybody, hey, time? Alright, thanks.
It would be time that you take on 5 minutes.
Alright. So, yeah, so basically, I'll skip over the demo things. But if I had something on port 80 like Apache, Apache install Apache 2, you would have this. Okay, so then you change it in, so if you want to enable it, you'd have to go to your Vagrantfile, which I guess I like to keep open in a separate tab. You change the forward port, you uncomment this, and after you uncomment this, you're going to need to run Vagrant reload, which will shut down the VM, update, and then start it back up with the updated configuration. Make sense? So there's update Vagrant reload. The next thing, and we'll get into more details about it in the second talk, is Vagrant provision, which is super exciting. Vagrant provision, so I'll hop over to the file to see if there's any examples in it. Virtual box you dog. Sorry. Okay. So here's a chef example. Inside the Vagrant file, you can enable a block that looks like this. Config VM provision. Chef solo is the name of one of the provisioners that Vagrant knows about. So this is like provisioning, Ruby-based provisioning framework. And if it doesn't know about your particular flavor tool of choice, you can write or download a Vagrant plugin for solve. And then you basically say cookbooks, which is like modules, if you will. Like my cookbooks live in this subdirectory of the Vagrant project group. Roles and data bags aren't that important. And then you say from within my module, I want to include enable these recipes, which cookbooks contain installation scripts or recipes. So then you say add recipe MySQL, add recipe, Apache, and you can download cookbooks for Chef, so that's the subject of the next presentation, and basically it will install it for you. For the purposes of today, I think it's enough to write this code, chef.vm.provision shell. Let's see if it's in the docs. So provisioners. Shell, that's the simple one. Does he give me an example? Yeah, he does. Look at this. So I'm going to put this in the Vagrant file. Provision shell. I'll just use quotes. And then, is this a new Ruby syntax? Do you know? I think this should work. And then write it to a file. Okay. So let's see if this works. I save this in the Vagrant file. I run Vagrant provision, which by the way, it runs automatic. It will run all the provisioners you define. It's comparing chef because I did something with chef. Because I didn't config VM provisioning instead. It may have run. Let's find out. So let's connect using Vagrant SSH. And in the home directory, I ideally would have had hello.sh. Do I? No. Config VM provision. Yeah, I don't know. I just copied everything. Another thing that you can do is Vagrant SSH -- to say my arguments to Vagrant SSH are done, and then the rest of it is going to be arguments to the SSH command. So you can do that as Vagrant. Does that make sense? You can, whenever you run the SSH command and connect to the server, you can, after it, like give it a string, run this on the remote computer and log out. So now, after I did this, I probably had the home directory was actually being written to root before because it was the shell provisioner. So Vagrant connected as Vagrant and I quickly sudo it. So then I actually touched the, I realized I touched the file in /root/hello.txt. But now, now you see that on that machine I have hello.txt. So, and then you can have multiple provisioners. You can have a little shell provisioner block. You can have a chef provisioner block or Puppet or whatever you want to use. And when you run Vagrant up, what it'll do is it'll spin up the VM as we saw, and then it'll run through all the provisioner blocks. Chef and Puppet, all these tools are what they call idempotent, which means if you run them a second time, they won't crash. I bet a lot of the bash scripts that you guys wrote to install stuff, you run it a second time and it'll crash in the first line the moment like something's already there that it installs. So when you're writing shell scripts for Vagrant provisioning, keep in mind that you need to like check to see if the thing you're about to do has already been done and not do it. In the case of apt-get installs, that's not a problem, just jam apt-get already does this. Great. So I don't have much time left, but I've got a few more slides perhaps I use. So I want to remind everybody that by default it mounts your project root on inside of the VM as the /vagrant. So that means you can edit it with your local like Vim or your TextEdit or whatever tools you want. You can do Vagrant package, so once you configure a VM to your liking and provision it to your liking, you can save time by creating a Vagrant box right out of that, which is Vagrant package. And there's Vagrant plugins, so this slide is a little out of date. There's a Vagrant snapshot plugin. So you can type in Vagrant snapshot take, actually you need to type in the Vagrant snapshot take snapshot name, and it'll ask VirtualBox to create a snapshot of your VM. And then you can do Vagrant snapshot go snapshot name, and it'll roll back to that VM, to that snapshot. So this is really super useful if you're about to like install some packages you're not sure about, and you're just wondering, well, is this going to work? Is it going to break my build? Is it going to install software I don't need? So you take a snapshot and you roll back. That's one of the examples of how this workflow can save your butt a few times over. And also, you typically, when you want to script something, you want to do it interactively first, but go back to the clean snapshot and then like test your script to see if it did the same thing you did interactively. Okay, we already saw the config file, so I don't want to show it too much. We already talked about provisioning. It supports chef, shell, blah, blah, blah. Provisioners look like this. You saw that. The chef solo provisioner looks like that. I could teach you some Ruby, but it's not that interesting because hopefully Amir's presentation will cover it. And then I have some slides about chef that actually Amir is going to cover. So that's the next topic. All right. I guess there's some things worth mentioning. So, I don't know, it's kind of random, but in the Ruby world, Travis is super popular as a hosted continuous integration server, and so everyone in the chef world uses it. And Cookbook is for chef. Okay. That's for cookbooks, so that's for chef. Here's some cool cookbooks. So there's not Vagrant snap. I'll update this slide with the better links. But there's basically 3 plugins I want to tell all of you about. First is the snapshot plugin that I adapted from Vagrant Snap when it was out of date, and that's super useful and it works. Don't look at this is updated. The second one is Vagrant Cashier. So let's see if I can move it for you. So every time you run Vagrant Destroy, which kills the VM and destroys it entirely, and then you run a Vagrant up to start from scratch and test it, he's going to have to re-download all those apt-get and gems and so on. So Vagrant Cashier is a plugin that says, wait a minute, why don't we just take those apt-cache directory and mount it to the host under that box so that all the time the cache directory will not be blank, but it'll be like if you ran the same thing 10 minutes ago, it'll still be there. So Vagrant Cashier is a big one. That's great. Another one is Vagrant Omnibus. So if you're using Chef, there's an installer for Chef. To get the latest version of Chef, there's a Chef-Omnibus installer script, and Vagrant Omnibus is a Vagrant plugin that you can just install. That does it for you automatically. That's all I want to say about that. Okay, and let's see if I have anything else interesting for you. Yeah, so Vagrant's source code is all on GitHub, which for me was one of the first substantial Ruby projects that I was a part of. I'm running these plugins. In order to write a plugin just like for Drupal, you often have to look at Drupal core source code to see how it does it. Vagrant's growing a lot, especially after we refactored it for all the support of the different providers. But it's still simple enough that you can take a stab at it and figure out how it works and how Ruby works. And it's really well written, and the guy's like a super developer. He's super responsive. And the docs, and there's an IRC channel. I don't want to talk about Chef. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this. Alright, so that's all the time I have for today. If you're interested in this, in the other room in this building, my colleague Amir is basically doing a continuation of this. So if you want to learn how to actually do this and how to get Drupal up and running, that's a great talk to go to. What room is that? Does anybody know?
Next door, 1640.
All right, next door. And actually, one last thing I want to show you is somebody who used Puppet instead of Chef. Did this cool project. I discovered it yesterday. So check it out. It generates a Vagrant file and a set of Puppet cookbooks, or the equivalent, for PHP. And he made a nice web GUI for it. So it's like, would you like a Vagrant file for VirtualBox, or would you like it for DigitalOcean, or would you like it for Rackspace? What's your base box you want to use? Configure VM memory and networking. Configure all this. Configure which additional folder VM/Vagrant you want. Which packages would you like my generated Puppet manifests to install for you? Do you want Apache or Nginx, and which module? So basically, all this stuff is generating those config files for you. And this is a super easy, but this is a much easier way to get started like that same day. So you just go through his wizard, get your PHP and MySQL settings set up. I think he's going to want some password somewhere. DB is here. I think it's maybe this one. Yeah, it's ignored. And then it gives you directory with, you see it, it's got a Vagrant file with a bunch of stuff already pre-configured as you asked for, and it has the Puppet and shell scripts that it generated based on what you asked for, and then you just go to that directory, run Vagrant, and you're going to get a base VM with all the things you asked it to. I think this wizard has actually made Vagrant a lot more popular in the PHP world over the last couple of months, so maybe something to check out. So thanks very much, and since I don't have time, I'll take questions. That's it.